What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be doing my top 10 books that I read in 2025. Wasn't my best reading year, but these things come and go. We're going to really try to improve this year. So in 2025, I read 24 books with a total of 10,288 pages. So definitely my weakest reading year since probably 2019. But life threw some obstacles this year, so it was a bit of a rough year. Let's just kick it right off. No honorable mentions. Number 10 is going to be Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I was pleasantly surprised by this book. It is a YA science fiction book, but the premise is something that really took me away. It's one of the best versions I've seen of what happens if we never die. And the world building in this book was good. The prose was simplistic, but not to the point where it was detrimental to the book. So I really loved the world building around this concept, and kind of the concept really elevated the prose. But yeah, the characters were pretty cookie cutter type tropey characters, but it wasn't so to the point where I did not enjoy the book at all. I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. I do think it's, at least the first book in the series, is something most people will enjoy. Absolutely. Number 9 is actually going to be We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. That's going to be the first book in the Last War trilogy. It's a very, very grimdark, not so well known grimdark series. This is, I have to say, very, very grimdark, and some really cool character arcs that are really well done here, and a plot that's super high paced but super intriguing to the point where you're wondering, okay, this is so dark, where is this going? And the characters are really literally crawling their way out of some circumstances, but really cool world building. If you want a taste of grimdark, this is one of the books that gets as grimdark as it gets. And that actually leads to number 8, which is going to be A Fool's Hope, which is the second book in this trilogy, The Last War. And again, the story continues. The number 8, which has a element that I was very surprised by. I didn't think that the series was going in this direction. There's a fantastical magic element in the second book. It would be a spoiler to reveal what it is, but kind of done in a fresh way. Can't really reveal any more, but it's definitely the better of the 2 books. The characters can continue to keep growing, more development, and again, the plot, because of this mechanic, develops in a really interesting way. So I had a lot of fun, but unfortunately the third book, by far, I wasn't a huge fan of how the trilogy ended at all, but definitely really enjoyed the first 2 books. That's going to lead to number 7, which is going to be The New Cold Wars by David E. Sanger. This is a nonfiction book. Great book if you want to understand where the U.S. and China are, and from a U.S. foreign policy perspective. You will learn a lot from, or at least I did, I learned a lot from what are some of these nuances, what are some of these things that are happening between the U.S. and China, what is the new kind of world order or system that we're living in, and how are all these different actors participating or actively working in this new system that we're doing. And a lot of great information. There are some critiques for sure, but in terms of the knowledge that I gained and overall enjoyment, I definitely learned a lot. So it's a must read for sure for something more recent, because foreign policy from the U.S. perspective shifts dramatically year to year, especially term to term. So this can get outdated quite quickly, but especially from the U.S.-China perspective, you will definitely learn quite a bit from this book. That leads to number 6, which is my last read of 2025, which was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This was my first Cormac McCarthy book. I was going into this book with high expectations, and I would say for the most part it met them. I think this is one of those books that, this is not like your typical dystopian book. You have to be in a mood to read this, because I kind of went from a fast-paced science fiction book to this, and with that kind of pacing, I wasn't quite in the right mood to read this. I think I would have given it a higher rating if I had been. And this book is an experience. It is a literary piece of work, in my opinion. Cormac McCarthy knows how to write, and he uses a lot of literary elements to kind of enhance this experience and enhance the message that he's bringing with this book. And it's a dark book, and at its core, it's a book about the love the love between a father and his son in the worst of circumstances. And there's a lot of beauty in it. And some of the literary elements that really enhance is, for example, there's no chapters. So you're kind of with the characters in this kind of survival mode that there is no break. Like, you always have to be on guard. These kind of elements can really enhance the dark elements. And it's a short read, but highly valuable. So from that sense, I really enjoyed this book. And again, you have to be in the right mood, I think. Number 5 is going to be The Lions of Al-Rassan by Guy Gavriel Kay. It was the first book that I read in 2025. I'm not usually a big fan of historical fiction when it's like in between historical fiction and fantasy. I prefer either you are a historical fiction or just a fantasy. And this was kind of caught in between in a way. But this is extraordinarily beautiful writing, extraordinarily beautiful. One of the best endings that you'll read. Some awesome character arcs, awesome moments, and just a splendidly beautiful adventure, and so much to love and talk about in this series. I think some really, really outstanding character work and cool, interesting interesting political concepts and mechanics and these kinds of things. So number 5 is rightfully so. And that leads to number 4, which is Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, as always. This book is super underrated, in my opinion, from the science fiction community. I think this is kind of, if you want like a crew in a spaceship going on an adventure to kind of like change the world or change the galaxy, with a lot of different alien species interacting with each other that all have different kind of cultures and standards and all these kinds of things, and those interactions between each other. I'm a sucker for those kinds of books. This book does that very, very well. I kind of got lost from the series. I definitely plan on rereading because I want to finish the series this year in 2026, but great writing. Tchaikovsky just always is going to do an excellent job. Some of the character, I do remember I was a bit disappointed about a couple of character moments, but for the most part, this is a really enjoyable read with some cool concepts. Tchaikovsky's always going to bring in some new concepts and interesting concepts that interact with the world that we are reading through. So number 4 is definitely well deserved. Number 3 is going to be The Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. The first in the Sun Eater series. Now, upon reflection, this book has grown on me a little bit more, but this book I can see how it's going to be the start of something great, and I'm about 75% of the way through book 2. Yeah, this is going to be, I'm going to finish this series in the first quarter of 2026 easily. Super excited to do so. Book, if you want something that's like a first-person examination, and you love Patrick Rothfuss's writing, but you want something in a science fiction epic, but you don't have a Gary Stu. Our protagonist is very flawed. He's dealing with many different. He's going from the top to the bottom and slowly climbing his way back up, and he's not always just outsmarting everybody. He's making mistakes, and those mistakes lead to different outcomes. So that part's really enjoyable. And the protagonist is definitely very enjoyable to read, and the writing here is just extremely beautiful, and I can imagine that it only gets better from here. So that's number 3. Number 2 is going to be Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. I know this book is not going to be this awesome for other people, but I don't know what it was about this book specifically. I know people look at this as like the Three Musketeers, but there was just something that really hit me with this book that made it my favorite fiction book of the year, and it's just that There are some great moments and this juxtaposition of the good and the bad, and our characters doing bad things, and that in this morally great place, and this way of looking back. Like, I prefer this way of looking back Traitor's Blade did than I do like in an Empire of Silence kind of way, because it's the looking back, like the flashbacks provide more context and more depth to the world that we are in at the moment, and it's uncovering why our characters are the way that they are slowly, and who are the great coats and these kinds of things. Of course, the ending was super deus ex machina, like to an annoying point, but and it will take a lot of people. The ending, it being so convenient, will take a lot of people away from the series, but there was just such great, splendid moments and heroic moments that were grim dark, meaning that a sacrifice had to be done. And I just really enjoyed the prose in this book. I really enjoy when a book is stylistic, but not to the point, you don't want it to be to the detriment of your reading, right? But the stylistic nature of this book, I really enjoyed. So I definitely recommend it, but I know not everybody's gonna love it the way that I did. Some books just hit more for other people than others. Number one is gonna be a nonfiction book. It's gonna be Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddharth Kara. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is definitely the most important book that I read in 2025. If you wanna understand cobalt, which is the material that is used for rechargeable phones, rechargeable batteries, Teslas, all of these kinds of things. They're all mined from cobalt, and the majority of that cobalt comes from Congo. The author did an exceptionally well job of researching where does the cobalt come from, how is it mined, what are the human conditions for this mining, and the political elements, meaning how are the Congolese people suffering from mining this material. And then, even though there's been people advocating for better conditions, and then they say there are better conditions, in reality there are not any other better conditions. And just also the supply chains, like he gives a good depth on, okay, how does cobalt get from Congo to other places, and a full understanding of cobalt to the rechargeable batteries that we all use. And I think it's fundamental reading to understand the world as it is, and understand that, like, our place in the world wherever we are, that we all have a part in what happens in Congo. And yeah, I think it's an exceptionally well-researched book, and definitely something I'm going to remember and utilize for the rest, at least for the next 10 years. It's an extremely important book. And one of the things I really enjoyed about the book, maybe enjoyed is the wrong word, is that his writing style, sometimes with nonfiction, it can get quite, what's the right word? It's not boring, but it feels heavy to read a nonfiction book sometimes, right? Because it's just kind of information poured at you. Something I really enjoyed about his writing style was description without being too poetic. Like, he would describe things he was seeing in the Congo from people he was interacting with in a way that it was really what he was seeing from the human soul, right? Like, the conditions he was seeing, the description he was giving to individuals, people, or situations, or kind of different views or images that he was seeing, that he was providing a description that was so deep and so revealing and so vulnerable that it really made you connect in a human way with the extractive material, it gave you that human connection of resource extraction, and also to the humans that he was writing about. So this writing style really elevated this book, and not to the point where it felt like bullshit. Sometimes when writers of nonfiction are providing like this kind of stylistic writing, it can end up feeling like just bullshit, that the author is just trying to be descriptive to show that they are good writers and excellent writers of their craft. But this did not feel that way. It just felt like the author was really just trying to describe to you these conditions, and when in the moment, if you're a human, what are those emotions that you are feeling? So I highly advocate that you read this book. It will definitely go in my top 10 nonfiction books list of all time, and I love that how it provides all this information. The only criticism I had of this book is I would have loved to know more about the supply chains, but as the author mentions in the book, this information is really hard to come by, meaning, okay, we got a lot of great information from the resource extraction to the trucks to the, I'm not sure what it's called, but basically when the cobalt is changed into material that it can be actually utilized for batteries and these kinds of things. A lot of those plants exist in China, which the author wasn't able to get to, but that was my only critique of the book, but extremely, extremely important book. So that's my top 10 books of 2025 that I read. Let me know what you guys think, and please let me know which books I should be reading in 2026. Thank you so much.